Here's how
Yes.
we build the list. And I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. But here's how it works. If you said to me, I want to buy, look, Dan and Jeff are in Rochester, New York. I think they're a Dan and Jeff that I went to high school with, if I'm not mistaken. And they're saying yes. So there you go. If they said, Mike, I want to buy my first property, but I want to buy it locally because, you know, we believe you when you say that it's smarter, it's easier and cheaper to get smart locally than it is from afar. There are a lot of reasons not to invest in New York State. I don't own any properties in New York State anymore, primarily taxes and snow. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy in New York State to start with, because if you buy locally, you don't have to solve for the issue of absolute remote management. And if there is an issue that you need to address, you don't have to get on a plane and fly 1,000 miles to Florida to look at your property. And even if you don't ever buy a property in New York, it makes sense to look in New York initially, because you're going to have to kick a bunch of tires and look at a bunch of properties, a bunch of not deals in order to get to your first deal, most likely. Unless you're Chris Lawrence, who signed up for the Storage Rebellion, and a week later, I'm not taking any credit for it, he bought a $1 million+ facility and doubled it in value in like the first 12 months. He's literally his fifth cold call, he found a deal. I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not promising it. I'm just telling you it does happen. What I'm about to share with you is it's going to sound too simple to be effective. I want you to suspend that judgment, because this process is the exact process I shared with Chris Michaels, and he contacted less than 300 people and got 3 deals, made hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process. So it doesn't need to be fancy to work. Dan and Jeff are going to jump on Google and they're going to go, let's say they decide we'll shop in all of New York. That's good enough for us. Or they could narrow it down to a smaller radius if they wanted. But we're just going to use, for simplicity's sake, the state of New York. I would Google New York State towns ranked by population. And the first listing is going to be a list of every town in New York, from Manhattan at the top to Podunk, New York, in the middle of the Adirondacks, with 38 people in it. What I'm then going to have you do is delete all of the towns with more than, you have to pick your number, but I'm going to say 5,000 people. You can always do this search again and add the towns from 5,000 to 10,000 later. But I'm going to get rid of every big town bigger than 5,000 people. I'm also going to get rid of every town smaller than 1,000 people. And then I'm going to start with the town of 1,000 people. And I'm going to pop that into, so let me back up and say, now you've got your list. It's on page 1 of an Excel spreadsheet. Small towns ranked in order. Then I'm going to take the smallest town. I'm going to go back to Google and I'm going to put Podunk, New York, self-storage. And what's going to pop up is, you guys are familiar with the map pack, right? So right at the very top, there's going to be a map with 1 or 2 little red dots on it. That's going to say Timmy's Storage Joint and Pack Rat Storage or whatever. You're just going to take the information from those 2 locations. So Timmy's Storage Joint, address, phone number, website, if there is one. The hint is, or the hope is, that there isn't going to be a website, right? And then we're going to have a couple columns beside that basic identifying information. Does it have a website? Yes or no? Does it have a does it have a website? Yes or no? And is the website functional? Yes or no? When I say functional, I mean fully functional. I can rent a unit, completely automated, not call this number to rent a unit, not submit this form to rent a unit, but like I can click buttons to sign my lease and get an access code and move in. And I can pay for a move in, and I can move out of my unit. I want to be able to do everything on the internet. If I can't do that, then it's not fully functional. The other column is going to say, does it have a Google listing? Now, here's the shortcut. If it had a red dot in the map pack, then it at least has a Google listing. So you're going to say yes to that. You've done that for the 2. The next step is critically important. It's the harder step. It takes longer, but it is where the gold is most likely to be found. And so you can't skip it. You're now going to open up the aerial view of Google. You're going to zoom in. You go to satellite view so that you're looking at the buildings rather than, the generic map. And you're literally you guys have heard of driving for dollars. We do this in the landlord space. We just drive around and look for properties that seem like they might be what we're looking for. Overgrown grass, shuttered windows, whatever the case may be. This is all we're doing, except we're flying for dollars in the storage space, and we're using Google so we can do it from the comfort of our office. We're going to fly over and just literally scan this small town of 1,000 people. And one of the reasons we're starting with a small town is, one, because there's a lot of potential there. But two, the process that I'm describing right now, as well as several of the processes that we use to assess the viability of the deal, comparing, a market analysis, competition, those sorts of things. It's easier to do in small towns than bigger towns. So all we're doing is learning with training wheels here before we get out and ride our bike on the freeway. The best part of it is you can win the race on these training wheels. I bought a property in Bronson, Florida. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Florida, but it's like right around the corner from meth country. I'm lying. It's dead center in meth country, Florida, like Northwest Florida. 1,030 people, Bronson, Florida. You can look it up. I think there's 1,030 people in the town. I bought it for $465,000. 3 years later, I sold it for $1.5 million. You don't need big towns. This is where storage kind of varies from some of the age-old adages of real estate investing. Location, location, location. That holds true in storage, but for different reasons. It's location relative to our competitors and the densest populated places. We don't need to be on the corner of Main Street. That's where McDonald's belongs. People go to McDonald's every day. People only go to their storage facility a couple times a year. We can be on the outskirts of town, but we need to be more convenient to those people than any of our competitors. You can tell I just go stream of consciousness. I end up all over the board. I hope you guys are tracking with me. We're going to go back to building our list. We've gone through, I think where we left off is we were flying around town looking for the facilities that Google doesn't know about. So these are very stereotypical, long, skinny row buildings. As you practice this will be very easy. I can't fly in an airplane without seeing every freaking storage facility until we get up above the clouds. There's almost like an aura around them, and I'm not kidding. Like they pop out to you once you start looking for them. And I know that makes you wonder if, the long hair I have came with a joint this morning too. I promise it didn't. Like, it's your reticular activating system. It is part of your brain, which causes you to notice things that you're looking for, right? You've had this example when you bought a black Prelude with awesome white stripes on it, and you thought it was the only one, and then all of a sudden everybody owns a freaking Prelude. It's not that everybody went out and bought a Prelude, it's that you're seeing every cool Prelude now, right? And so as we look around, we're going to identify these properties, and these are the ones that we want to put an asterisk next to in our Excel spreadsheet. What we're going to do is get as much information as we can. Now, there's no Google listing, so in order to get the address, you might be guessing. You might have to get down to Street View and look directly at the facility and see that it says, 58 on the corner of one of the buildings, and it's 58, Lehigh Street or whatever. There might be a sign with a phone number. That phone number might no longer work. Like, this is where you become a detective, and you literally got to roll up your sleeves and track down the owner of this facility. You can get enough information. Usually if you get the address, then you can get onto the real estate GIS Street or Encore, any of the databases that you guys might use to kind of manually skip trace your property owners. And then you're going to make contact with them. My encouragement is build that list, get to 200 at a minimum, 200 facilities, and then just start calling them or mailing to them, or preferably a combination of both. That was the longest answer ever to Bree's question of, do I do it manually or build it myself? But hopefully there was some extra nuggets built in there. I recommend building it yourself unless you can't. The bottom line is all of us either right now have either more time than money, or we have more money than time. If you're really busy, but you got a boatload of money, then yeah, you can buy a list and afford to waste the money that's wasted when you send to a bunch of people that were never going to sell to you anyways, or when you lose the deal to other competing investors. Like, that's fine. You're taking the what we call the shotgun approach. You're just sending 10,000 mailers out and getting a bunch of calls back and then weeding through those. What I just described is my preference, because I've seen it work really, really well. And embedded in it is a forced learning that I think all of us, as we're getting started, can benefit from. But it's the rifle approach where you're just finding properties and aiming directly at it. If you hit it, great. If you don't, at least you're somewhere near it. You've been playing with it. You've been talking to sellers. You're starting to learn the lingo, and you're that much better off because of it. Hopefully that makes sense.